Welcome to this week's edition of Mob Talk. I'm Dave Stratweiser.
And I'm George Anastasia.
All right, George, a partial victory in New York for Joey Merlino. What do you think?
A hung jury, but in a lot of ways it's a victory for Joey.
What do you think about the case so far?
We got a good shot.
Okay, George, a big win for Joey Merlino in New York in federal court. 3-week trial, nailed it.
Maybe one of the biggest wins in a long and checkered career of battling the feds. I mean, this one could have put him in jail for a long time, and he walks away, got 9 lives.
Yeah, and I mean, what do you think? Break this down for us a little bit. We knew the witnesses weren't going to be very good because of their background, a lot of other things that went on with J.R. Rubio, things like that. But let's break it down a little bit. Pete Lavaglia got beat up pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, the feds built the case around the testimony of cooperating witnesses, and their credibility was always suspect. But Lavaglia had a lot of baggage separate and apart from this case. And Rubio, the way he conducted himself during the investigation and the way the FBI supervised him, played into, I think, the defense in this case. And I guess the jury saw all of that and said, there's not enough here to convict.
Now, I saw Rubio on the stand. He looked like he didn't want to be there, but he testified.
Right.
He was very matter of fact. He walked the jury through dozens of tapes, gave his impressions here and there, threw in a couple of one-liners here and there, kind of zinging Joey, you know, when they went to the part, we're gangsters, and they asked him, what do you think that means? He says, they're members of the mafia. He told the jury, looked right at the jury and told them that. So at least on the prosecution end of it, he did a good job, but then he got beat up on the defense side.
Yeah, I mean, again, he's a witness who had a lot of issues, and Eddie Jacobs is a master at probing and poking and that kind of stuff. In terms of being part of the mob, I mean, the interesting defense in all of this was Joe was saying, I used to be, but I'm not anymore.
Right.
So I had this reputation that I was the mob boss, but I disavowed all of that and walked away from it. So there were ways for the defense to counteract almost every point that the feds made in this case.
Yeah, interesting too, Joey saying, you know, I might have been around these guys and I might have got money from them for favors I did to them and things like that, but I wasn't part of the gambling operation. I didn't take bets, that kind of thing. And the same thing on the healthcare fraud end of it. I didn't know how it worked. I didn't take scripts. I didn't take money from the scripts, that kind of thing. And that kind of worked here.
I think it did. I mean, you know, Joey's position has always been, I'm a gambler, not a bookmaker. And I think that might have played with this jury as well. He doesn't, you know, Joey doesn't deny what is undeniable. I gambled, yes, but I'm not a bookmaker. I didn't take bets. So that's the way he addressed the gambling charge. As far as the compound cream, I think there were no tapes, my understanding, where Joey is specifically talking about that scam. So all you had were cooperating witnesses saying, yes, he was involved. But I don't think they weren't able to connect all those dots. It was a big fraud, big case, but he luckily walked away from it.
And the prosecution came with a good witness at the end, an expert to kind of walk the jury through how the healthcare fraud thing worked and that kind of thing. But looks like they went witness, and then came with documents and a show for the jury at the end.
The potentially boring stuff, the number stuff. I mean, it's a $157 million fraud, and you've got to explain how that worked. I think the problem was they could show how it worked, they could show certain people benefited, but they weren't able to get over that hump and say Merlino was one of the people who did benefit, and that's why he's walking away from all of this.
Let's talk a little bit about Wayne Kreisberg too. He was an add-on at the end, another government witness who was actually part of that fraud, pled guilty to that fraud, waiting to go to jail on that fraud, that kind of situation. But it doesn't seem like he landed any glove shots on Joey at this point.
Again, I mean, this is a guy that, from Merlino's perspective, he met in Boca Raton and was going to invest in Joey's now defunct restaurant, Merlino's. So what the defense always had was an explanation. Yeah, I knew this guy. Yeah, we were in business together, but the business was my restaurant, not this scam that he was involved in. So there always were ways to counteract the Fed's case. And, you know, not being there every day, it's hard to say exactly what happened, but clearly the jury said there's not enough here to convict.
All right, now 2 things also came up on Joey's end of things. We had a situation with a juror. He denied it happened. The juror went to the judge and said that Merlino, some of his crew were leaving one night at the courthouse, and he said hi, and he used her name. And she went to the judge, and it was a big to-do in court, and Joey got admonished by the judge.
Yeah, I was surprised when I read about that. Again, not being up there, you don't know for sure, but he's been in enough trials to know you don't acknowledge a juror, you don't say anything to a juror, you don't even look at a juror if you can avoid it. I don't know all the circumstances. I think the explanation from his side of it was they happened to be getting on an elevator at the same time and looked at one another and nodded, but he never said hello to her. I don't know the truth of that, but that's something, given his experience in trials, You don't do any of that.
Yeah, you get in an elevator with somebody, you ignore them like they're not even there,
you have
right?
to. Yeah, well, we're in the same situation.
Well, reporters
as the
do
media.
that all the time.
Yeah, you can't say anything to these people. You don't want to be perceived as trying to influence them in any way, shape, or form.
All right, now during cross, Rubio gets pushed into a corner pretty good by Eddie Jacobs. He's getting beat up, and he throws a fastball right at Joey's head, a personal fastball, and Joey's wife sitting in the front row. We won't go into all the details and that kind of thing, but the bottom line here is Rubio tried to hurt Joey personally there. Did it work?
I think it was a cheap shot. I think the jurors probably saw it for what it was. The tabloids in New York loved it. It's
of course they did.
But in the end of the day, it had nothing at all to do with the case. Or if you accept Rubio's explanation, tangentially it had something to do with the case. But it was in many ways, I think, a cheap shot and his way of throwing a sucker punch at Joey.
All right, let's talk a little bit about this. You and I were saying for months we didn't think the feds would go ahead with this case because of the J.R. Rubio stuff with the tapes and things like that, and then the FBI investigation stuff. They decided to go anyway, but at the end of the day, we knew this wasn't a great case going in. I know the defense did a good job and everything. I'm not taking anything away from them, but nobody thought this was a blockbuster case against Joey Merlino.
No, I mean, when the indictment first came down, everybody was, oh, look at this, here they come. But when you started to peel away and see what was there wasn't a lot there. My position has always been Joey was thrown in as an afterthought. They wanted to have another big name. They had Perillo and Onofrio from the Genovese crime family, and they wanted another big name, and that was Joey. And they created this East Coast LCN enterprise, which only existed on paper. I think that's what part of this was. And at the end, you know, what happens in New York consistently is everybody pleads out. And I think they thought that was going to happen here. And the track record of Joey is he doesn't plead out. And he didn't again, and he really rolled the dice here. Big gamble, and he won. Well,
sometimes he wins, and sometimes he loses. Let's talk about one other thing. It came out in testimony that the feds gave Rubio $25,000 to throw a Christmas party in New York, and he paid Joey's, for Joey and his wife to come up to that party. A couple of the guys went up, $5,000, lured him right into their jurisdiction, and then hit him with charges. I think they're hearing Merlino's involved. They need to get him up in the jurisdiction, so they spend 25 G's to get him here. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, jurisdiction was always a big question in this thing. Should Joey have been prosecuted in Tampa? Should New York have let Tampa take care of it? Should Philadelphia have been involved? They weren't. New York was the 500-pound gorilla in this case, and I think it worked against them in terms of Joey Merlino. That's the way it played out.
All right, let's talk a little bit. We're just going to brush up against this because we'll probably talk about it in another episode. But where does Joey go now?
If he's smart, he goes back to Florida. You know, and the question is, it's always been a question with Joey, is how does he live the way he lives? Where's his income coming from? And it's always going to be something the feds are going to look at. He's walked away, you know, and people are telling him, Joey, that's it, stay away, don't get involved. And he keeps saying no, 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 no. He's got a lot of issues. He's got a lot of personal issues. I mean, now he's got a health issue as well. Yeah. If he's smart, he goes and retires in Florida, enjoys the sunshine, works on his golf game, and stays away from all of this. Can he do it?
All right, let's say he comes back to Philadelphia. That's not going to be good.
He comes back to Philadelphia, he's back on the radar. I mean, he's the face of the Philadelphia mob. And if he's back in Philadelphia, he's going to be around guys that are involved in that life, and he's going to get drug back in or walk back in. Smart move is to stay away.
Yeah, he might get walked back in with a pair of handcuffs on. The feds have not ignored Joey Merlino in the last few years. My sources tell me they're actively still working on items that could give him a problem down the road.
Well, I mean, that's the other interesting thing. If part of Rubio's testimony, from what I understand, was when he went to Florida, Patsy Perillo, the capo from New York, said, stay away from Merlino. He's a walking indictment. Everybody's looking at him. And then Rubio was asked, well, why did you connect with Joey? And he said, because the feds told me to. So, you know, that went to the idea that the feds entrapped Joey and suckered him into this. But yeah, he's always going to be somebody they're going to look for. He's a high-profile guy, the John Gotti of Passyunk Avenue. And if he comes back here, it's going to be more of the same.
They just keep taking shots.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Joey Merlino gets a big W, a big win. Where this goes next, anybody's guess.
The Merlino saga continues.
We'll see you next time.